off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and
I'm just trying to figure out what's in her mouth.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Aquilini.
No, he's a good human being, is what he would say about himself, I'm sure.
Who's hosting this thing?
Take charge, Kevin, would you? Jesus.
First time we ever met those guys. That was the major drunken pub argument.
I think you guys are the worst.
I'm gonna have to probably watch some Canucks hockey, unfortunately.
Just making friends left, right, and center, and probably some enemies as well.
Tell him to shut up. He needs to hear that every once in a while.
Off to a good start.
All right. We are live.
It's okay to talk when it goes live.
Yes, it is. Happy Sunday to you as we are closing in on the start of training camp. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. We are live, Facebook.com, the Hockey Podcast, YouTube.com, the Hockey Podcast. We are also live where we are sitting at 100 and the Walt Padubny of subscribers. He wore number 75 in one season with the Quebec Nordiques since 1988-89. He scored 38 goals and 75 points. And he's played his he got traded to New Jersey and played his final 3 seasons with them. So there you go. Walt Padubny. Put that down on your pipe and smoke it. You can also, of course, wow, I'm in grumpy mood. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Chris Faber is expected to join us a little bit later, but we'll say hello to everyone.
How about now?
Chris Faber is expected to join us now. Wow, well timed. How are you?
I'm doing good, guys. It's been a busy week here with rookie camp and everything kind of cranking up. But man, just to get back in the rink and hear pucks hitting the boards and hitting the posts and guys skating around, like it was therapeutic to get back into the rink and hear all that stuff. So it's been a good, happy week for me so far. I'm in a great mood the last few days here.
Yes, I imagine. Well, let's say hello to everyone else before we get into the things. Hello, Devin.
Hey, Kev.
What's going on?
I think your grumpiness is being rubbed off by me to you. So you're welcome.
I think it's probably more just Albertans in general right now, Dev.
Valid.
Yeah. I just before we go on, Jason Kenney is the Buffalo Sabres of premiers. That is my stand. Anyway, Chris, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm good. Sitting here in a cloudy Burnaby day. It's starting to not be pants weather again. I'll have to ask Chris about that. Sean, what's going on?
Oh yeah, it's nice and it's a blue sky and sunny here. So it's a nice day out, and yeah, I'm excited to talk hockey and on ice hockey talk a little bit, and that's just I've missed that.
Yeah, I was. So Chris, did you wear shorts to the arena? Because I did that for my first appearance at a Greater Vancouver Canadians game at the South Rink here in Burnaby. That was the dumbest decision I've ever made in my life. So I mean, what? Were you smarter than me on that, at least?
Day one, yeah, I've learned from my past mistakes of wearing short sleeve shirts. That's kind of been my thing around Canucks media over the past year is wearing too many short sleeve shirts for these practices and everything. But no, I did it up, man. I was wearing burgundy pants that I just bought. I wanted to just get the fresh pair of pants out there for day one of rookie camp. So we rocked that. I felt like I was looking pretty good, about as good as I can look. For the first day of rookie camp, and it was a fun time to get back to the arena, see some of the other guys, and see some of the media members that we haven't really seen in person since, gosh, I don't know, some point in last season. So it was good to catch up with a few people and see the guys skating around on the ice. It was awesome.
Like Jeff, I mean, there's going to be some people you have never met because I mean, Jeff Patterson was talking about he's never met Nils Höglander as an example. So this is going to be fascinating. Just quite something.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to meet Vasily Podkolzin for the first time in person. I'm sure he has to be aware of one of the the 300 plus GIFs and highlight clips that I've tweeted out over the past 2 years. So might be a little bit of like an awkward fanboy moment when I meet Podkolzin for the first time, but I think it'll be good. And it was cool to read some of the quotes that he gave out about being able to understand English and be able to speak it, just not comfortable to do it in an interview yet. It'll be cool to see how that kind of progresses throughout the season and see how much English availability will have.
I believe the one line was, "I'm not nervous."
Yeah, I love that he did come back with a few English answers there. That was great, and I think that was kind of one that he probably had scripted because he was quick with that. But even at the same time, it's a little bit tough with a translator, obviously, to kind of hear his personality. But you could tell like he was having some fun. I know when I asked him about his relationship with Niels Höglander, he even brought it up. Like he was laughing as he was giving the answer. And I'm like, oh, right on. Here comes like a good quote out of Podkolzin. And we didn't get great stuff from the translator. I don't know if she cut out a few things or whatnot, but I think the kid's going to have some personality. He seems to enjoy media. He's been around it, obviously. He's been in the spotlight in Russia as a teenager playing in the KHL, where a lot of things at intermission were about Podkolzin, commercials with Podkolzin, and just during period interviews to talk about Vasily Podkolzin. So he's already been a star, and I think it's going to be interesting to see him kind of grow in North America as an English star now.
Yeah, he definitely showed a comfortability level that was far beyond what I was expecting, and it made me feel a lot like he wants to be here. He wants to be part of the Canucks, and he wants to stay. Like I think Canucks fans were definitely a little gun shy with the experience with Nikita Triamkin, and I think any sort of worries about that, I feel like got washed away with how he presented himself in that media scrum. Just as you said, he was talking through a translator, but there was you could definitely tell he was trying to understand the questions, and he would actually almost ask the is that what they asked to the translator. So you can definitely tell he's trying to make the effort to learn English and to be. His personality will come out real soon.
There is, I'm just was thinking about this too. Like you look at Höglander too. He's got that personality. Petey, when he comes back, we'll get into him, but he's got that kind of that personality. There's starting to be a bit of a personality coming onto this Canucks team. Probably a little bit of that. To use a wrestling term, kind of a heel mode where the rest of the league might hate the Canucks again, but Canuck fans will enjoy the personality of this team. And I do think that's a good thing for this market, and I do think that it's a good thing for the NHL, because I don't think we have enough black hats. We don't have enough, for wrestling term, we don't have enough heels in this league, and I think it's good for the Canucks to develop that personality and that brand overall.
Swagger is heel is heelish, because that's all I see. I see confidence in Swagger, like from JT Miller to Petey has it. Bo Horvat has it in a very sort of subdued way. He has a confidence and swagger in the way he carries himself, but he's very, very like if we're gonna go wrestling terminology, he's very baby faced in how he presents himself. But yeah, I think Garland and OEL are going to show a little bit of swagger and a chip on their shoulder this season as well.
What I mean, sorry, before Devin, just to clarify, what I mean by that though too is that's when you're a fan of your team, you appreciate those personalities. Great example would be a guy like Alex Burrows, loved in Vancouver, absolutely admired, but you go outside of the Canucks community, Alex Burrows is hated. Right? Ryan Kessler was, before the Canucks fans started to hate Ryan Kessler, the rest of the league was hating Ryan Kessler, and Canucks fans loved Ryan Kessler. And that's sort of what I'm thinking is starting to kind of develop here is the Canucks fans will appreciate the players on the team, but outside of Canucks, like some of this swagger, it's going to dwell a little bit of hate, and that's not a bad thing, I don't think. Anyway, Devin, what were you going to say?
Kevin Bieksa too. He's one of the heels back in the day, especially being a Flames fan. But yeah, like I really don't see that kind of personality in them as of yet. But hey, there's these are young players. The core is super young, and there's time to develop some hatred here in the Pacific Division.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, like, they're so young and they haven't won anything yet, right? Like, I think people like them around the league because they suck. They don't win anything over the past few years. But once these Canucks start winning games, I think that's when that hatred that we're kind of talking about might start to develop. You know, people are going to say, like, wow, look at how hard Hoglander's going in on the boards. You think of the Faber stuff last year, you know, he was laying out players like when the opportunity presented themselves. I think Podkolzin is going to be similar. So, yeah, the league might like them now, but when they start to get to that point where they're consistently in the playoffs and having these long series, I think that's where the hatred's going to come from. But right now, they're just kind of like you said, the baby-faced guys that seem to be liked by everyone right now because they're a fun young team. But when a fun young team evolves into a team that's, you know, kicking other teams out of the playoffs, other teams are going to start to hate them for that.
Yeah, it'll go from like a swagger to almost like a borderline smugness.
So let's start with what you saw with Podkolzin on the ice. What are you seeing? What was your impressions?
Yeah, I mean, look at start for him. I think compared to everyone else that he was on the ice there, you could tell that just the puck comes off of his stick different than a lot of these rookies that were out there. He's got a lot more strength compared to them. The big battles that I was kind of looking for was to, you know, I think he's going to dominate against Victor Persson or Canuck Leaper when he's in the lineup against those guys. But Jet Wu was the player where every single time I saw 92 going up against 52 was, you know, I wanted to watch that battle because Jet Wu would be as close to NHL competition that we could see Podkolzin play against. And honestly, Podkolzin kind of just physically dominated everyone from Jet Wu all the way down the lineup. It just looked like Podkolzin was on another level. The only person that was really matching Podkolzin's game had to be Mikey DiPietro, and it was kind of funny to watch Podkolzin a few times. Like, I know that we haven't heard him speak a lot of English, but he knows a lot of four-letter words because Mikey DiPietro was shutting him down on quite a few moves where it should have probably gone in. But just looking at Podkolzin throughout the day, it was nice to see him helping out with Danny Klimovich, who, you know, English is a lot more of a struggle for him right now. So you can see Podkolzin helping him out with a lot of drills. And honestly, one of the more vocal guys. I think like three guys that I noticed that, because we were only at day one of camp, which we can get into later. I find it ridiculous. But we were only at day one of camp. We only got to see the first day there. But you could tell that Jet Wu was very vocal. Chase Waters, out of Saskatoon Blades, 3-year captain in the WHL. He was a very vocal guy and you know, kind of showed some leadership qualities right off the bat. And then Podkolzin as well. I mean, every goal scored, big celebration from Podkolzin, you know, big fist bumps and everything with every single player he was with. So I think he's jacked up to be here. And honestly, he looked like he was on another level compared to everyone else on the ice. Like I said, aside from Mikey DiPietro.
So who are you playing him with at the start of the season?
Yeah, I'm gonna really I'm really excited to see what happens with that second line battle. I personally still think that this isn't what I would go with, but I think that we're still going to see Tanner Pearson play with Bo Horvat. That's just, you know, Travis Green's fallback plan has always been to put Pearson with Horvat on the second line, and they'll play with Garland. So the third line, and this is kind of what I like about it, is the fact that Hoglander and Podkolzin are talking about this relationship that they're building together. They've been friends ever since they were drafted. It was a lot of fun to see Podkolzin and Hoglander be the wingers on Jason Dickinson's third line. And even then, like, you get a chance to see Travis maybe move around some lines. If JT Miller comes down and play on that third line for a little bit, that's a really exciting third line that'll get some weak matchups. And to think that Podkolzin, Miller, and Hoglander would go up against other teams' third pairings, like, that sounds like an absolute dominance coming from a third line there. So it's going to be interesting to see how Dickinson's used. It's weird because I think all Canucks fans and everyone who follows this team, like, when they picked up Dickinson, everyone's like, boom, third line center. This is a third line center for us moving forward. He's going to be free. He signs the contract. Everyone's excited for it. But all we keep hearing from Jim Benning and Travis Green is about Dickinson's versatility and how he can play on the wing. And it's something that Canucks fans aren't talking about, but obviously the coaching staff management is. So I'm going to be kind of curious to see how the third line shakes out. But I do think Podkolzin starts there and ends up potentially working his way up just because of his size. I think he might have a better chance getting up there with Horvat. So it'll be interesting to see. I think he's a middle six guy to start the year for sure.
Yeah, I that's the one you nailed it with the JT Miller wild card. he showed that I think he could play not a 1C, but he could play in a center in one of the other two lines in your top nine. And yeah, the idea of a Miller, Höglander, and Podkolzin quote unquote third line would be just if it hits the way I think it should, that could be like one of the most dangerous lines in the league, just because of matchups, as you said, going up against third pairs, second pairs. They could rip apart the league in that role. And Pearson, but the other thing is, I wonder if they still stick with Pearson, Horvat, and Höglander, and then maybe look at trying to build like a real deep lineup in that top nine with like a Garland, a Pearson, Miller, Garland type line too, and then give Podkolzin a shot on with Petey and Besser. Like there's so much opportunity to mix and match, which is what I really like about where the Canucks are up front.
Yeah, my concern within the top nine is that if you are going to be spreading your talent through those top three, or I guess those three lines, then your top line isn't going to get as maybe not. It'd be hard to get in a rhythm of the game, because it's been documented for years now that if you're not going to be playing as much, it's hard to get in the rhythm of the game, and you want to make sure that your top end players get the ice time that they need and deserve. But I do understand the thought process there with, going back to when Pittsburgh won the Cup, they had the HBK line on your third line there, and man, yeah, those matchups that you can exploit, especially within this division. The lack of depth that Vancouver seems to have this year, obviously, yes, Podkolzin is a very highly touted prospect, and he will be playing this year. I'm just kind of curious how he'll match up against NHL caliber players.
Well, it certainly seems to be off to a good start. Just on Dickinson, though, I don't know if people heard him on 31 and a half Thoughts with Friedman and Merrick, but it sounds like it's going to start on a third line role, and then they're going to discuss his role. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in some form of a top six role at some point during the year, at least that's looked at, even as a possible winger. Because he has the flexibility to do that. If you can move Miller to center, I don't think it's unreasonable that you put Jason Dickinson on the wing at some point in time either. I don't know what you people think of Jason Dickinson on the wing, but it's having that flexibility. We know what the law of the line looks like, and it's good when it's on. We know what Pearson, Horvat, and Höglander looks like last year, and when they were gone on, they were good. If you can find a way to build a third line, or mix and match and find on other sort of like combinations that may work better, I think it's something. We've seen Travis Green kind of in the past couple of years pick a lineup and stick to it from throughout the preseason. And then give them time to build chemistry. I just wonder if there's going to be more mixing and matching through the preseason this year.
Just due to the competition level, I think that's going to be happening.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is going to be watching how that Horvat line's used, right? I mean, for years now, the Horvat line has gone up against the toughest matchups. And I think that's going to be the interesting thing I found last year. Tanner Pearson actually had tougher matchups than Bo Horvat when facing off against first lines of opposition teams. And I wonder if Tanner Pearson, he's going to be the judge of that, right? Like if Niels Höglander is up on that line, they're going to try and get that matched up against weaker lines and really kind of get offense going. And then if it's Podkolzin or Pearson, you're probably going to see a lot of the same from Horvat's line about him matching up against other teams' top lines in the league. And that's going to be kind of how we're going to see it played, which is interesting, because then Dickinson, a lot of people are just kind of expecting that to be the shutdown line. So it would make a lot of sense for that line to start with Tanner Pearson, Jason Dickinson, and Vasily Podkolzin. Podkolzin's comfortable on both sides of the wing, so he can kind of bounce around very easily. And if you do end up seeing that line of, like I said, Pearson, Dickinson, Podkolzin, that's probably be a line getting a lot of matchups, and we probably won't see a ton of points from Podkolzin this year, but I'm expecting him to jump right into the NHL and be fine defending against anybody. I mean, he showed so well in the KHL that I believe is the second best in the world. And I just think that this kid's going to, like, I know that he's going to shock Canucks fans because a lot of them haven't watched him like I have. But to myself, like, I was shocked to see Nils Höglander last year come from the SHL where he was playing 14 minutes a night on a third line in the SHL, comes over to the NHL, immediately is in a top six and playing more minutes than he was in the SHL before he came here. It's an example that I like to use with Podkolzin as well, because I think Nils Höglander really benefited from playing with NHL caliber players. Like having them be able to play up to his speed, I don't think he had that in the SHL on his third line that was a lot of dump and chase. He was able to really kind of get to the full potential of his skill set in the NHL with the NHL caliber line mates. Podkolzin's the same way. I think you guys all remember seeing him at the World Juniors and just thinking like, you know, look at him setting up these Russian players and they just couldn't finish these guys. Like it felt like he was setting up so many plays. And I always go back to this one shift that I definitely clipped in and was kind of one of the ones that got a lot of likes on Twitter and shared quite a bit. And it was him setting up 5 scoring chances in 45 seconds and not one of them goes in. And to me, it's just like, if you get him with even Jason Dickinson, who isn't known to be a scorer, Jason Dickinson's a hell of a better scorer than every 19 and 20-year-old Russian that was on that World Junior team. I think if you get Podkolzin out there, he's going to do a similar thing to Höglander, where his skill set really gets to its full potential when he's with NHL line mates.
If they go with that third line that you were mentioning, though, does that worry you at all that they would have Niels and Connor, 2 really small wingers with Bo on the second line, though?
Yeah, and I think it worries Travis Green. I feel like Travis Green doesn't feel like the kind of coach that's going to put, 2 guys that are under 5'10" on a line with his captain, right? Even though they're very skilled, and Höglander was the second best 5-on-5 scorer last year for the Canucks. Garland obviously, jumped up quite a bit with his assists last year, but he's also a finisher. So I don't think it worries me because I see the way that Nils Höglander plays, and he doesn't play like he's 5'9". Garland, we've heard similar things, but I think we got to see it first in a Vancouver Canucks jersey if his strengths kind of fit with Horvat's strengths as well. So it doesn't worry me just seeing, the height and the weight on a roster, but you got to see it for a few games of preseason and see if the size does really make a difference. I think the NHL is moving so fast and so forward right now that size is really not going to mean a lot in a few years. And I say that as a guy who's 6'4", 300 pounds, so I should probably be on the side of size. But I don't think that there's going to be any problem when they're actually playing together. I'm just curious if Travis Green wants to give his captain a player who's new to the team, along with the guy who's a sophomore, when he has Anderson right there, who he's known and trusted to be alongside Horvat.
Yeah,
go ahead, Sean.
The way I look at Garland and Höglander is they play bigger. It's not about size; it's how big you play. Like we've seen some tall, big players not play big, and they play like they're 5'9" and 150 pounds.
Dougie Hamilton.
But yeah, that's why I wonder if we're going to see some playing around with these lineups going throughout the preseason, which goes against what Travis Green has done in the past couple years.
And not to mention, you have Tyler Mott, who played out of his mind. I think it was 2 years ago, and he was playing absolutely amazing. So he can go up and down the lineup as well.
Yeah, you definitely options. There is a concern. We'll get to that. We'll get to that one concern in a moment. But I do kind of want to stick on the rookies here just for a quick second. And I want to talk about Danila Klimovich because for the first half of the U18s, he was one of my favorite watches. This guy there was some raw ability about him. Definitely a project, what I saw. What did you think of the pick that the Canucks made? Canucks picked him in the second round. And kind of what was your impressions of him in camp?
Yeah, to me, it was another one of those where Jim Benning was in the arena and he really liked what he saw. I think Klimovich was going to get picked by someone in the second round. Like I think that he did enough of the U18s to warrant that. I didn't think it was going to be, 11 picks in, or I guess 10 picks into the second round. I didn't think it was going to be that high, but to me, it wasn't as big of a reach as a lot of people were saying. I think a lot of scouting sites had him in the 3rd or 4th round. I think he did enough of that in U18s to really prove that he could be a 2nd-round talent. A lot of people are like, oh, it's just one tournament, right? It's just one tournament. You can't judge him off of that. But to me, the way that I kind of look at it is like that tournament was also the best possible spot for him to showcase. I think that was the biggest pressure he's probably ever had in his life. He's been playing in the Belarusian 2nd division. There's not a lot of fans or scouts or anything in those leagues. So for him to come up and show so well, not only in those games where he put up a hat trick and had 2 goals in the other games against the weaker teams, but if you watch the tape of him against Canada, like every time he's on the ice, Belarus is looking okay, and every time he's off the ice, Belarus is getting absolutely crushed by that great Canada team. So to see him be able to have the confidence to pull off some moves against Canada, some dekes that you probably wouldn't see from a guy from Belarus normally, I thought it was a fine pick. I don't think it was the best pick that the Canucks could have probably gone with at the time, but it was a big swing, and it could end up looking like the best player if he does hit. These things are just such a low percentage of hitting that you have to just kind of watch how he develops here. I like the idea of Klimovich really turning into, we mentioned Tyler Mott a little bit there. I think if he can develop into a guy who really fits in your bottom 6, can bring that size and skill, but also be able to score, I think that's a guy that the Canucks would love to add to that bottom 6 group. And, even if it's just a 4th-line winger in a couple of years, I think that would be a great boost for them to have a little bit of scoring in their bottom 6. So I don't see Klimovich ever getting into the Canucks top 6 unless he absolutely blows up over the next couple of years with, a better structured training that he's going to have in the QMJHL compared to the Belarusian 2nd league. And yeah, he's got a long way to develop. And then just like you said, from camp there, I liked him. I liked him the way that he was skating. It looked like he had some power behind the stride. His stick handling was probably the thing that stuck out the most. If I had to pick one skill, I thought that his stick handling was pretty damn good. And there was a couple little things where they're just kind of like skating around with the puck and trying not to lose possession. In Klimovich, you could see the hands were, moving damn fast. The guy can definitely stick handle, and that's going to be huge for him when he gets to the Q. Where I think he's going to absolutely rip it up. And I think that should be the expectation. Like when he gets to the QMJHL for the Huskies there, he's got to be the best player. Like he has to go out there and be one of the best players on that team, be one of the leading scorers for them, if not in the Q as a league as a whole, really. And to know that he has 2 years there potentially, I wouldn't be shocked to see him spend both years of the next 2 here over there in the QMJHL if his development goes well in the first year.
Now I know it's pretty early on here, but kind of curious on if you see anybody else popping, like a Jet Wu or a Pot Colson or Klimovich.
Yeah, I mean those 3 guys are definitely the ones that look the best out of that whole group that we saw. The other name that was nice to see, Connor Lockhart. His shot looks good. I thought his edge work was strong. Like he looks like he's at his size, you kind of have to be a good skater, and he definitely looked the part in the first day of rookie camp there. Scored a nice goal to win it in the scrimmage for Team White as well. But a couple other names, I like Chase Waters. I like how he was in the drills, just, being the guy, that guy in practice is the first guy to hop up and do the drill every single time. It was always Chase Waters and Jet Wu to kind of show everyone else how the drill wanted to go. And I'm going to be curious to see how Waters fits. He's a really interesting overage signing out of the CHL to me because he was the first time 3-year captain for the Saskatoon Blades, as I think I mentioned earlier. This is a guy who just was amazing for that Saskatoon Blades organization, one of the great organizations in the WHL. And if he's going up and he's battling for a spot in the bottom 6 of the Abbotsford Canucks against, say it's an Ethan Keppen or a Carson Folk who he's battling up against, I just have to think that the coach is going to go with Waters in that spot because he is the type of player who coaches are going to love. He's going to do everything in practice. He's never going to sway from the game plan that the coach has set out. So I'm going to be excited to watch him play. And then one of the guys that I didn't really get shocked or blown away with Victor Persson, who I've been very high on for a while here. I want to see what he can do in the WHL. He wanted to get here last year. Just gone through so much crap, to be honest, and us, over in Sweden over the last few years, with not being one of the final cuts of the World Junior team, to having his junior 20 season canceled, to going to the SHL. And now, a lot of people are like, oh, at least he got those 4 games in the SHL. Well, he dressed for 4 games. He played a total of 80 seconds throughout those 4 games during 3 shifts. So he didn't really get SHL games in last year. But to hear him talk that he liked the practice and it was good to kind of go up against some of the best players in the world over on the SHL team. That was good to hear. And then the last name that there was one that, looked like he was struggling quite a bit in Ethan Keppen, who the Canucks didn't qualify when his RFA status went through, but ended up signing into an AHL deal. And he might have looked like kind of the weakest skater of the group, which isn't great because that's kind of been the knock on him. The guy can put the puck in the net. He's a big, thick dude, but skating's always kind of been his knock. So we'll see if he can even crack the AHL roster this coming year.
Just back to Klimovich just for a quick second. I just want to point out let me go back here. The second round pick after him, just for Canuck fans, because if he doesn't pop, there's going to be some angry people. Francisco Pinelli, taken by the Kings.
Mm-hmm.
William Stromgren, taken by the Flames. Logan Stankoven, taken by the Stars. You can imagine if he doesn't move, there will be some Canuck fans. If any of those pop after, that will be the rage. But anyway, I was going to ask you about.
I'll just say if I could jump in here, Kev, the guy before him, Scotty Morrow as well, who was the right shot defenseman with big body, similar spot to Jack Rathbone, where he played high school hockey and ripped it up. A 6'3" right shot defenseman picked the pick before Klimovich went. So I think that the Canucks were pretty high on him. So another kind of weird spot in that draft where he was, a lot of picks right after him that would have been good as well. And then the pick right before him was kind of, to me, the perfect option for the Canucks there at 42.
So you talked about Pearson. What about everyone was really high on Mikey DiPietro. He's in an interesting spot because he didn't really get an opportunity to play last year anywhere, to the chagrin of Sean, who wanted him to play anywhere, like just a road hockey game. Just give him a road hockey game. But it sounds like he had a good camp. What are we expecting from him this year so far?
Oh God, man, Mikey DiPietro was so damn good. It was ridiculous. We kind of were just talking throughout the media there, just saying has Mikey let in 3 or 4 goals throughout this whole practice, throughout the drills, throughout the scrimmage, and people were saying I could count on one hand how many pucks have gotten past Mikey DiPietro in this skate. He looked like if you were to take Thatcher Demko and drop him into a rookie camp or just any other NHL goaltender, Mikey looked like that. It was crazy to see how much bigger he looked when taking on a lot of these drills where a guy just kind of comes down the wing and takes a shot on him, or 2-on-1 situations. He just felt bigger. It looked like he was taking up more space. I know that that's something that Ian Clark's talked about with my co-host David Quadrelli about wanting to really be not hunched over. That's been Mikey's problem because he's not a tall goalie, so he doesn't really gain much from hunching over. He's got to stay up big and tall and more of him in a squat instead of kind of leaning over, so it kind of covers up more of the top of the net for him. And it looked that part throughout a lot of the drills. And then, the best part of Mikey DiPietro's game is how athletic he is. And there was times in that scrimmage, he's rolling around. I think the Canucks actually posted the video of him making a big glove save, the puck coming right back down, and does the roll from one side to the other, kicks it up, gets a block or save. That was the parts that you were just watching, wow, he's still got that thing that we all know he has, but it felt like he really added something to what we saw last year. And only in those handful of games that he got, I think 4 games in the AHL last year, when we got to see him play in those, it was he looked better for sure. And it's too bad that we got such a small sample size. With all that time being Clark, definitely did something to his game. But to see him just absolutely steal the day at day 1 of training camp as a guy who wasn't even on the roster for us to watch at rookie camp there, he looked good. And man, to see what he did in his rookie season in the AHL, now to think that he's coming back, I guess, after a full year with Ian Clark, where he didn't get ice time. That's what he needs right now, is just to get into game action. I'm expecting a massive year for him. I think that this is going to be a similar year for Mikey DiPietro that we saw with Thatcher Demko in his final AHL season, where January came around and the Canucks had to trade Anders Nielsen so that they could get Thatcher Demko up and playing games. I don't think they're going to do the same with Halak because of that no-move clause in his contract, unfortunately. But Mikey, I would not be shocked to see him be pushing for an NHL spot halfway through this year, to see what he's going to be able to do in the AHL. He's going to be the star out there in Abbotsford. You're going to see DiPietro jerseys or jerseys or whatever they're selling at Navy. You're going to see a lot of DiPietro merch out there because he's going to be the top star in Abbotsford this year.
Yeah, looking at I just looked up some pictures of Mikey playing in the OHL, and if he's standing taller and being and showing himself bigger to the shooters, that's going to be huge for him because he's only 6 foot. Like he's not your prototypical build of a goalie that teams and scouts are kind of looking for now. But I really hope that he can find a way to. I just want him playing because last year just like he played 4 games and that was it, unfortunately. And I want him to play because I think he, especially now after working the whole season with basically Ian Clark and his attitude. That was the one thing I really noticed about DiPietro last year with his attitude. He was like, I get to work with Ian Clark day in and day out. Like this is great. I may not to get to play, but I get to work on that, and maybe that just helped him get focusing on the technical side to fix the issues with his stance and some technical areas like that to help him take that next step.
With how good we think that DiPietro is going to likely be in Abbotsford, and all the signs that they've made this past offseason, I was just curious, Chris, how well do you think the Abbey Canucks are going to do this season in the AHL?
I think from looking at this roster, like they seriously should have a chance to go and win the Calder Cup in the AHL. I think defense is strong. Like even we're all excited to see Jet Wu play, but we seem to forget that Brady Keeper's there, Burrows is there, Kyle Burrows, and as well as Madison Bowie, who a lot of Canucks fans have kind of forgot about him. He's probably going to be like top defenseman in Abbotsford. I wouldn't be shocked to see Madison Bowie be the number 1 side guy. Jet Wu, where does he kind of fit there, right? Like he's, Jet Wu was playing top pairing minutes a lot of the time last year in Utica. He's likely going to be the 3rd defenseman here because I don't think they're going to sit Jet Wu over a guy like Brady Keeper or Kyle Burrows like that. I don't think they're going to sit Wu for that guy. They want Wu to get as many games in as possible, but the defense core is damn strong what they're going to put together. The forward group hasn't had really the offensive firepower like we've seen in the past for the AHL team with the Utica Comets. Like, having a Sven Baertschi, Nikolai Goldobin, Reed Boucher over the past couple of years, these guys are very close to NHL caliber players. I think they're a little bit of a different team, but to me, like it really fits. And I think that Trent Cull had a big part in this. Like this is the team that Trent Cull wants. Like the team that they're going to have there in Abbotsford, they're not going to be pushed around. They're going to be a tough group of guys who are going to grind the living hell out of every team they play against. And that's the exact same way that Trent Cull played his career. Trent Cull is pretty famous for the 300 penalty minute seasons that he put up when he was playing in his professional career. So he's the type of guy who wants a rough and tumble team, and that's what they're going to have in Abbotsford. They're going to be a hell of a lot of fun to watch. And if they can just get enough scoring from their kind of younger skilled players that they have out there, whether it be Jonah Gadjevich or Chase Waters hopefully stepping up, and some of these other guys like Kepman, if they can start to add some goals and bring something to maybe a Phil DiGiuseppe or some of these other players that might just not make the NHL team and go down to the AHL, like honestly, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them making a deep Calder run, and which that would be huge. Like if Mikey DiPietro finishes his AHL career on a Calder Cup run, that's massive. And if he does that, there's 100% chance Mikey DiPietro is in the NHL for the 2022-23 season as the backup to Thatcher Demko.
All right, Dev, you heard that. You have to tell your boy Justin Dowling that he has to go on a Calder Cup run.
I'll let him know. Because he has a bunch of skill as well, and I know that he can put the puck in the net if he really wants to.
Yeah. So
you
Chris,
talk more about your connection.
Yeah, I was about to say Devin played with Justin Dowling back when midget or bantam level, right?
It's bantam AAA,
yeah. So.
Right on. Yeah, he's the guy that's a perfect example of that. Like, I think he's in the battle for the 13th forward spot, but if he goes down to the AHL, like expect a line of like Dowling and Justin Bailey to be the top line, whatever other winger you want to put there. Like if you have a top line in the AHL, Justin Gadjevich, Dowling at center, and then Justin Bailey on the wing, like that's a pretty good line. Justin Bailey's the fastest dude to maybe ever play in the AHL. He absolutely flies by everyone in that league. It's kind of ridiculous to watch sometimes, like because you see what he does in the AHL for Justin Bailey, and you're like, wow, this guy like needs to be in the NHL. Then he gets there and his timing's just a little bit off, but to see him just break away from AHL, like, it's quite the sight to see, and I think he's going to be like a big Showtime guy out there in Abbotsford.
All right, let's move it to the elephant in the room, which is, we talked about who PD is going to play with, but the fact of the matter is Pettersson and Hughes are still not signed as of we are talking, unless something breaks while this conversation happens. Dollywall has reported that Pettersson's in town, I guess, are you concerned this isn't done? And for all the moves that Benny made in this offseason, I think overall we can say that there's, a lot was done. You brought in you've pretty much sealed the Abbotsford Canucks. Still hard to say for a Calder Cup run. You said that. And then, you got Dickinson, Garland, Halak. You made a number of you were really aggressive this offseason. Does Pettersson and Hughes get done before camp? And I guess more importantly, does it need to get done before camp?
Yeah, to the more important part, absolutely it needs to get done before camp. After what they went through last year, I could imagine that organizationally morale has to be pretty low. And I think it's been definitely jumped up quite a bit due to what they did in the offseason. They really improved the roster. They completely overhauled the AHL team, and I think they did a great job of that. But to me, it's almost like if you're building a house and the first thing you do is you fill it with all the furniture, right? Like I wouldn't get my house just kind of with the frame set up and then like, perfect, time to get that TV in the living room. That's what it kind of feels like with the AHL team where, Pettersson and Hughes are the roof and the walls of the damn house, and we haven't seen put that together yet. So it's really strange that the way that they've gone through this. I think they've kind of done a completely bass backwards here. With how they've mixed up not getting Pettersson and Hughes done and signing all these other players, whether it be, even like taking it back to the deal that I do really like a lot in Thatcher Demko. He was one of these guys who was going to be in a mix of RFA players with Pettersson and Hughes. Like he was an RFA coming up at the same time. They got him done pretty fast. The fact that this deal hasn't been done yet, I understand they're superstars, but to me, we all know how much cap is available. It's somewhere in the 15 million range for these guys when you kind of go to the moving players down the AHL, all this fancy mumbo jumbo that Armin Dial would be better at telling you about than I. But you get these guys, you know how much money there is for them. You kind of just need to figure out the term. I think the big thing that's the sticking point is the Canucks want to get at least one of them done long term. So it sounds like it's Quinn Hughes to be that guy. I think with Pettersson now being back in town, I've just got to imagine that this great deal is done with Pettersson. Like I have to imagine that it's, if not completely signed, sealed, and delivered, it's got to be pretty much like a handshake agreement. Now that he's here, I think they can get a contract signed and get him on the ice. But you want to see that happen as soon as possible. Like I wanted it done on Friday so we could kind of go into the weekend and see this happening. And if they go into training camp with either one of these guys holding out or not really signing a deal yet, I think it's a huge knock to just them trying to build back up the chemistry that a team needs to go on a playoff run. I mean, this is just another big speed bump in the road as you're trying to take off a team that wants to get into the playoffs. And there's still, I don't think there's a lot of work to be done. I just think they really got to just honestly buckle down and just figure out the deal, get it signed, get these guys on the ice with the rest of the team. Because if they're not there camp, that's all we're going to talk about. You could have Mikey DiPietro not let in any goals the first day of training camp. We're still going to want to talk about Pettersson and Hughes not being there. So if either of those guys are there, I believe this is a huge fault of Jim Benning. And they've just straight up, like I think I tweeted out the lyrics to Tired of Waiting by the Trues, an excellent song, but I just tweeted out the end where they just keep saying I'm tired of waiting multiple times. Like that's how I feel about this whole thing. I'm tired of just dealing with this all off season. I want to talk about what they're doing on the ice instead of what they're doing off the ice. And to me, it would be a major knock on the general manager if they're not there at training camp.
Do you put a little bit of potential blame on the player agent trying to play hardball, though? Because, like, what I read was that, like, especially for Quinn, being a, I think, 2C or whatever RFA that he is, the only leverage that he really does have is not showing up to camp.
Yeah, that's absolutely it, right? I mean, there's not a lot that really everyone's like all the leverage. Like it's not like Pettersson even has that much more leverage as an RFA. Like I guess he could offer sheet sign somewhere, but another team would have to give up, potentially give up 4 first-round picks to sign Pettersson to an offer sheet that he would be happy with and happy with signing. But yeah, that is the only card for them to play with Quinn Hughes, and it is. These are the 2 top agents in the NHL, right? These are the big power agents of the NHL. This is obviously this is the reason So I got an email there from the Canucks about media. But we want to see these guys get back into the lineup. And yeah, the agents had out one card to play, but at the same time, I think Hughes wants to get on the ice. I think Pettersson wants to get on the ice. I think the Canucks want to get on the ice. And I think the agents just want to make as much money as possible. So to me, there's going to be kind of a break point for Pettersson and Quinn where to see what they went through last year, to see what this team looked like, I think they just want to get on the ice to a certain point as well. And it would kind of shock me, if Pettersson or Hughes is talking to their agents and say, like, hey, I got to be there for camp. Like, I got to be there for camp. I got to be with the team to start this year. Especially for a guy like Hughes, who a lot of people knock on what he did last year. I think he wants to have a big showing this year, and that starts with him being there on day one of camp. So, they hired these agents for a reason, right? Like, these two wanted to get big deals done here, and I think they're both going to get it. It's just kind of, to me, I think they're just trying to lock down the term.
Yeah, my hope and expectation at this point would be that they basically bring it to the 11th hour, maximize what they potentially can get, and then sign right before camp starts.
That's probably that's why I think you might see it with Pettersson, right? I think the Pettersson bridge might come first. I think what you're talking about there, Chris, is seeing Quinn Hughes wait until the last second, see what the best offer is, and then take that. I think that's what we might see with you. But I think Pettersson, I just get the feeling that Pettersson's done. Why else would he be in Vancouver, showing that he's in Vancouver already on his Instagram?
True. Yeah, that's where I was getting. The fact that he's in Vancouver says a lot to me, and says that, yeah, as you said right at the beginning there. I think they're close. I think it could be announced as early as tomorrow type deal, because as you said, why else would he be in Vancouver if it wasn't close?
It's one thing to be in the city; it's another thing to be showing that off on social media.
Yeah. My questioning is why give Pettersson a bridge deal when I think that he should be getting a long-term deal over Quinn Hughes?
I think it just might be too much money. I think is what it is because they only have, like they said, $15 million this year to do it. And I think if you give Petey the long-term deal, I think you're shortchanging Hughes even on a shorter term deal. I think that's just the way it has to go with the cap space that they have.
Yeah,
Chris, I'm kind of curious
because you're probably getting. I mean, if you're looking long on Pettersson, you are looking at $10 million, right? I don't think that Pettersson's signing a 7 or 8 year deal in the nines. I think with the power agent that he has, his demand would be over 10. He's the best player on this team, and to think that the agent wants him to make money that's worth his value for the whole term of that contract. I think if Pettersson's making $10 million plus right now, will he be worth it next year? Maybe. Will he be worth it the year after that? Maybe, probably. But I think for the remainder of those years, you're getting Pettersson in all of his prime. I'm very happy to pay Elias Pettersson over $10 million if we're getting the prime Pettersson years where he's 24 to 29. I think you're happy paying $10 million. And the other interesting thing with Pettersson is, I think looking at it from the agent's point of view, if you do sign a 3-year bridge deal, 3 years from now, the cap's going up. We're going to have fans back in the arena. Sales are going to be higher. I wonder how much difference that looks like when we start to see the cap. We've heard that it's going to go up $1 million for next year. I wonder if we're getting, a +3 for the year after that, or a +2 for the year after that. You start to see the cap get to about $90 million. Pettersson deserves about 10% of your team's cap at least. So I think that when you get to that, and to think that the agent wants him to sign a long-term deal right now doesn't make a lot of sense for him. But even for Hughes, that's probably the argument from them for him as well, because you're seeing the defense market be just crazy right now. So I think that the agents want to get 2 bridge deals done because they want to see what they can get for their guys on neg deals 3 years from now. So that's like I kind of keep bringing up that term. I think is the final thing that they're arguing about. I think that the agents want bridges for both, and I think the Canucks want a long-term deal for at least one of them. So I think that's kind of where they're stuck right now. And God, I'm so tired of talking. You guys want to talk about anything else? Any other Canucks
well,
talk?
I have a couple quick questions, and then we can kind of move on from this. I don't know, when you said 10 million, I understand where you're coming from, but that still feels like a lot. And I am not on the side that Pettersson has to take a pay cut for everyone else to come. That's not my point. But that still feels like that's. I know what you're getting at, but 10. It's still I still feel that that's a little bit of an overpayment right now.
You don't want it to be
Now.
a Mitch Marner contract, right, Dev?
Oh God.
Hey,
Chris?
The way I look
Donnie
at
Taylor thinks it's the worst deal in all of hockey. So
yeah, Donnie texted me the other day about all these tweets that I've been sending out with him in the jeans. If you guys, I don't know if you've seen the Taylor jeans tweets I've been sending out. And I was like, oh,
When we
God,
get him
Donnie
on,
is going to be pissed. He sent me a text, and I didn't see what the text said. I saw Don Taylor, and it was recently after 2. I'm like, oh God, Don's gonna be pissed at me. All these tweets, and he's like, just wanted to say I love these tweets. He does enjoy that as well. But to just kind of rebuttal what you said there, Kev, I find it like, yes, next year or even this year, if you're paying Elias Pettersson $10 million this year, maybe a little bit of an overpayment. I'd say yes, that's an overpayment. Depending on, maybe he blows up this year and proves me wrong on that. But I think this year it's an overpayment. When I look at 2026, 2027, that kind of season, you're getting a 26, 27-year-old Pettersson who's been around the league as a veteran at that point, and he's your leading scorer for the last 4 seasons. I think you're pretty happy paying him $10 million. And I think that his defensive growth is just going to continue to go upwards. And the only thing that would kind of hurt him making $10 million would be the injuries. And I think he's battled those for, parts of all 3 years where he's been in the NHL. And that's kind of the big knock, that if I was the Vancouver Canucks and I was arguing about a contract with the agent, that would be my biggest selling point about making him come out at a lower value, was that he has had a battle throughout his career. It's something that he's going to have to work on to be, a strong NHL top end forward as we move forward here. Because he's not a top 25 player in the league right now, but I'm pretty damn confident he is a top 25 player. If I were to take a sample size from right now to say 2027, one of the top 25 players I would want on my team, potentially one of the top 10 to 15 players I'd want on my team, would be Elias Pettersson.
I don't disagree with you on that. At all. I agree with you. It's just it's a lot right now. What are you paying Hughes?
I think Hughes is coming in. I think the deal is 8 years at 6 million. Or 6 years at $8 million.
I'm not just ballpark $9 million. So
yeah, I think it's somewhere around there. I think if it's a 6-year deal and the number starts with 7, I'm happy with that. I think that's something that I'd be happy with. I think, I think Jim Benning, it's weird. Jim Benning does such a bad job of signing bottom 6 forwards and bottom pairing defensemen. But look at the whole Horvat deal. Look at, some of these deals that he has signed, I guess, for these guys on longer term deals. I think the Thatcher Demko contract's pretty good. I think the Bo Horvat, kind of like I mentioned, I think Brock Besser's bridge deal was good. To me, Jim Benning, though he's been horrible with contracts, with the guys that make a lot of money, maybe that's just when his math kicks in at some point, like has to get to a certain amount of dollars. But he seems to do a pretty decent job with re-signing his big name guys. But just overall, looking at the contracts, I'm not saying he's good at them, but to look at the Horvat value that you're getting for him, making 5.5 or whatever he's at for his contracts, I think that there might be a little bit of surprise, and I'm hoping there is, to see how good a deal for these two guys is as we hopefully hear it over the next 4 days here. Because man, where are we sitting here on Sunday afternoon and 4 sleeps away from training camp? I didn't think we'd be talking about contracts at this point in the year, to be honest.
What was your? Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
I was going to say, the one question I have, and do you think it matters who signs first at this point?
Yeah, nah. Just get them both done before freaking Thursday. As long as, maybe, and I forgot who brought it up, but yeah, the fact that, Pettersson's posting that he's in Vancouver, maybe Hughes is coming to Vancouver in the next couple days anyways. I'm guessing that he's expecting to be at camp. He might not be participating in camp as part of what his agent's advising to him, but you got to think when the contract's signed, he's got to be ready to go. In a similar way to Brock Besser, where I remember training camp in Victoria where he wasn't there for day 1. And that was a huge talking point for everything. But as soon as he signed, he was, I think a day later, he was practicing and on the ice with the Canucks. So I think that the way that last year went, I think Hughes will be hopefully getting to Vancouver here pretty soon. Keep those Dollywall notifications on. I'm sure he'll have the breaking news on Quinn Hughes there.
I guess the other thing that I want, before we move on, in terms of big picture, because we've got Brady, Kachuk, we've got a bunch of others that haven't been signed, and it feels like there's a bit of a. It felt like, according to Friedman, there was a waiting game. We learned something different this week around Brady, Kachuk, but is that playing into this? Is one of them waiting for one of the others to sign? Especially when you look at Petey and Brady are probably going to be in the same range. Is that mattering in some ways?
You know what? If Hughes and Pettersson weren't with a power agent, the best agent in the NHL, I think so. But I don't think that their CAA group is looking around the league a lot. I think that they're very well aware. Obviously, they're looking around the league for comparables and everything like that. But I don't think they're waiting for another deal to get done. That doesn't feel like the CAA way to me. They're the folks that want to be able to set the standard for everyone else, and they want to be like, hey, look, we are making Brady Kachuk more money with the work that we did. We're making Kirill Kaprizov more money with the work that we did as the top agency in the world. I just get that kind of confidence vibe from their agency group. So I wouldn't be. I understand that it could help as comparable, but to me, if one of those two in Kaprizov or Chuck gets signed before Pettersson, I think it ends up actually helping the Canucks, because I don't think that they're really going to blow. I don't think Kachuk is going to blow anyone away unless he gets an 8-year deal. Potentially, he makes a ton of money over there in Ottawa. But to me, I think that it's going to be Pettersson and Hughes setting the market a lot more than Kaprizov. Kaprizov, I guess, has the potential to do it, because I do think he can get a big 8-year deal with Minnesota as well, but it doesn't sound like they're getting any closer. So I think the market's going to actually end up being set by Pettersson for those other two forwards a little bit more than vice versa.
The one that nobody's talking about, just to kind of branch us off a little bit, is Rasmus Dahlin. That is going to be a very interesting situation, because you look about what happened with Buffalo and Eichel. I can't imagine Dahlin being super enamored with this organization at this point, and that may be the one out of all of them that goes a really long time. That might be the longest. I mean, as much as people are saying it may be like, as much as Matthew is interfering in Brady's negotiation, I still think that they'll get that done at some point pretty quickly before the season. I could see Dahlin lasting into the regular season.
Right, because he doesn't really have the points to put him up against the other comparables, right? And for him, it's got to be tough to want to sign an 8-year deal in Buffalo because of what's been going around the organization. And, the quotes that Jack Hughes had on 31 Thoughts as well about Quinn being looked at around the league as not an elite defenseman because of what he did last year. I think the quote was something like, when you're on a bad team, you get scored on a lot and you don't score a lot of goals. And that's kind of the way that Rasmus Dahlin's probably looking at it. You put Rasmus Dahlin on this, on the Tampa Bay Lightning, he's getting a lot more points. He's putting up a much better goal differential. And I think that he's going to be a guy who's making a lot of money somewhere. But for him to play in Buffalo on a team that's going to be tanking for the next 2 years, I'm going to guess that he's trying to sign a contract where he can get the hell out of there as soon as possible. Because if he's the type of guy who signs an 8-year deal, you'd probably, in a similar way to Oliver Ekman-Larsson, how, 1 or 2 years into his mega deal, he's already wanting out. You got to think about where Rasmus Dahlin at some point, right? This is a guy who, you watch him play, and he really makes a good impact in the two-way game, but it's Buffalo, man. It's got to be tough for him, being your first overall pick and knowing Buffalo's a spot. I think that's going to be the biggest struggle. I would be shocked to see an 8-year deal for Rasmus Dahlin, but that's only because it's Buffalo.
Yeah, I'm smelling a bridge deal for sure. And you got to think that he's been like, if there's a trade out there, make it and get your draft picks and get what you want to stock your cupboards with potential. I don't know if he's worth a first rounder, but because he hasn't really popped yet, he hasn't lived up to his first overall pick. But he definitely needs to be thinking about those things for sure.
Do you offer Sheedham?
Not at this point. I don't think anyone who would offer Sheedham.
He's a bit of a wild card too, right? Because yes, he has the pedigree, but who knows?
I think Montreal might be an interesting one there. I don't know if their cap situation is still that wide open, but I think a an offer sheet for Rasmus Dahlin is very easily matched by the Buffalo Sabres, and that's part of the offer sheets that we're not thinking of here, where whatever he agrees to with another team, I wonder if he agrees to that with the Buffalo Sabres, right? Like, because they could just match. They could be like, hey, you know what? We like that deal. We'll just take that. You haven't been wanting to sign a deal with us. So offer sheets would be kind of interesting for a guy like Rasmus Dahlin, because I think that the problem isn't him wanting to sign long-term with anyone. It's wanting to sign with Buffalo. So offer sheets, I would say, are out of the equation here, because he probably does want to get out of here and sign an offer sheet, but Buffalo will likely just match.
Yeah. I mean, the handcuff is you can't trade him if you do offer sheet him.
Yeah, and Buffalo does have over $2 million in cap space right now. So Chris is right.
$2 million to get to the floor.
Do we want to stick on the RFAs or do we want to talk TV?
That's good. What is it? You want to talk about Brady?
I'm also valuable of Chris's time here, so kind of maybe Faber, where do you want to go?
Let's go with some RFAs. I think we're kind of on the topic of money right now. We're all warmed up for it. Let's do a little bit of that.
So Brady and the Sens are not close. Matthew did an interview basically saying that Brady is they're not close, and that Matthew and Keith and Dad are getting involved in this negotiation. And this is an interesting situation for the Senators, because we have acknowledged he's the captain. He's going to be the captain at some particular future point. He's the face of the franchise. No offense to Thomas Chabot there, Devin. And the Ottawa Senators still have, I would argue, the worst PR problem, although I think that there's a team wearing behind me on the right and on Devin's left that also has a pretty big PR problem in and of itself. They need to get this somehow done and get Brady into camp. So let's maybe start where we're thinking there.
I think it gets done. I think he's someone who wants to play. To me, it sounds like if it wasn't for the fact that Keith and Matthew are telling him and to play hardball, he'd be signed by now.
Yeah, that sounds like exactly what's happening. And he with him being most likely the captain of the Ottawa Senators for the foreseeable future, obviously it's not 100% yet that's what's going to happen, but I think that it's a foregone conclusion that will happen. I'm kind of no numbers have come out, right? As far as I know, with what they're looking at, unless Chris knows something we don't.
Yeah, no, I don't think much has come. I think the big thing for him, like if you're going to make him the captain, I think you want to get the 8 years done. I think I brought up OEL earlier. I think it's going to be a similar deal to what we thought OEL saying there. I think if they go long with him, it's going to be interesting to see the final deal. Like if you guys were to say, what's a good deal for Brady Tkachuk at 8 years long? Like I would say around somewhere in the 8s to me. Yep. I think that if you're getting him for 8 years, I think anywhere in the 9 starts to worry me a little bit. I mean, he's going to be an impact player, but he's not going to be he's not a first-line winger on every team in the NHL, right? He's not a first-line player like Elias Pettersson is on every NHL team. To me, Brady Tkachuk is a guy who is a first-line there, and he's probably one of their better players, but he's more of a captain like Bo Horvat if he ends up becoming the captain, where he doesn't have to be your most skilled player, but he's definitely a guy that you can rely on every night. And I think you're going to get that from Brady Tkachuk. But to me, maybe we'll go around the room here. If you guys want for like an 8-year deal, I think anything over 8.5 would be like, ooh, that's a little steep for Brady Tkachuk.
He'll probably get, or I'm guessing over 8.5 is going to be an 8-year deal, just because of what he brings to the dressing room. And there's not many players like him. He's skilled enough that he's kind of like a Tom Wilson type of guy. I think he has a higher ceiling than Tom Wilson. The fact that he hasn't really played, I guess he did play 71 games back to back, but I think his ceiling is is high up there. So it's one of those things where I see it probably being around $9 million, especially if he will be the captain, and that's probably what they're saying. And maybe I'm sure he wants to be a Senator, but there's still a little part of me that says, hey, maybe he wants to get out, just like Darlene.
I could see 7. You got Batherson at 4.9 till 28. The other RFAs that they have to deal with coming up are Josh Norris, Cole Sherwood, Alex Fermenton. They don't really have anything else there that is really that worrisome. So I would be comfortable giving him 7 at this point with 8 years. To me, I think that would be a pretty fair deal.
I'm with Devin. I think he ends up over 8 and in that 8.5 range. I just think that if indeed they want him to be the captain, that adds to his value. He's a very special player. He's a unicorn, as Brian Burke would say, and he's already got the in-family comparison of a 3-year deal that Matthew Tkachuk signed at $7 million per. And I think you can make the argument. I know I've said this for 2 years, and most of it was jokingly, but I think you can make the argument that Brady's the better Tkachuk. And right now, and is he really going to sign an 8-year deal at the same sort of cap that Matthew signed at 7? I don't think so.
He wants those bragging rights.
If he's going 8 years, it's gonna be in that 8.5 year range, I think.
Yeah, I would have to agree that my initial inkling was 8 to 8.5, and that actually wasn't based off of like me just saying mine last and hearing yours as first. I was actually kind of in that camp before, but yeah, for me, 8 to 8.5 seems reasonable and not an overpay.
Oh, the only other one that I guess the only other payment there, it's a couple years away, is you've got Tim Stützle to think about in 23-24.
2 years.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of with Chris that I feel 8's a bit of an overpayment at this point, but I do see where you guys are coming from, and I think I agree with you, Sean. That I think that there's Devin. I feel that there is a legitimate argument to say Brady's better than Matthew at this point.
I'm on the same boat. I really am. As much as I love Matthew Tkachuk, I mean, his foot speed isn't quite there. He doesn't have the size. He has the skill and he has amazing hockey sense. But Brady has the foot speed, has the size, and arguably has the better shot. So you know what? I'd say you could go either way, but right now, yeah, Brady Tkachuk. Hey, the younger brother is always better.
Hey, there's not biased at all.
Not biased there at all. Which is the one that what is one that the other one? Here's some other ones. Nolan Patrick in Vegas is still not signed. That's a quiet one there. I mean, I think the one that's getting a lot of people's attention is Kaprizov. Of course, you can't offer sheet him, but that's going to be a very interesting situation in Minnesota. Is there one in particular that's kind of hiding under the radar?
For me, the two that stand out to me or that aren't getting enough are that we haven't talked about already: Robert Thomas in St. Louis and Nolan Patrick in Vegas. They made the trade for Nolan Patrick. Why haven't they signed him? That's a bit weird for me.
They're up against the cap right now, so they got to do some cap magic to figure out where they're gonna fit him in, and it's probably going to be a bridge deal in my thought process here, and kind of maybe even just a 1 year prove it deal potentially. So that one is definitely up there for sure for me. But I think one that's maybe a tier below Robert Thomas and Nolan Patrick is Kiefer Bellows. He's a quietly a really good player within the Islanders organization, and a good depth piece that they have there. So that's another one that's on my radar as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't really have an extra name to add here. I think that there's you guys have covered the main ones. A lot of these other RFAs that I see on the list here, bottom pair guys, bottom fourth line players, maybe some AHL guys. So it'll be interesting to see him shake out. I just think that Ottawa, like looking at, I think Victor Mete as well, RFA for them, they got to get him done as well. See, got a busy few days here coming up before training camp kicks off here. And by the way, my email that I just got from the Canucks talked about training camp. No mention of Zoom at all throughout there. So I'm wondering if we are going to be actually face-to-face with a lot of these guys at training camp. It was kind of what we were expecting at rookie camp, but then we still got stuff with Zoom calls. So I'm wondering if training camp might be the first time we're back in the room, because I know they want to plan for that this season.
Well,
that'd be awesome.
Kudos to the NHL at a 98% vaccination rate for the players. I think that's great. They have handled the vaccination part of this fantastically well. There's some other things that I'm kind of blown away at the mess that they've handled, but the vaccination part, I think I will give them kudos to for sure. So yeah, I think it's great. I think, even Haley Salvian was kind of wanting that. I think everybody's been kind of wanting to get back face to face, and I think, even the players probably want the face to face as well. I think they missed that too. I think this would be great for everybody.
Yeah,
brings back
here like
normalcy.
Yeah,
I thought it was brutal doing like fantasy football and having to doing my drafts and having to check who was vaccinated or not before I'm drafting these guys. Like seeing what they have in the NFL. Been what a nice show for sure to see what's been going on over there. Like I didn't think I would ever have to look up vaccine records of players who are on anti-vax squad before I drafted them in fantasy football. I never thought sports fantasy would come to that.
Yeah, that's true.
Definitely an interesting wrinkle for sure.
Yeah. The Oilers did get Kyler Yamamoto signed to a 1-year. I'm fascinated by that deal in some ways, because that seemed like a guy that the Oilers seemed high on, and that seems like a pretty. If there's a bridge deal, that's a bridge deal. I wonder what's going on there.
To me, that sounds like a prove it to me. 1 year at 1.1. Are you kidding me? For a guy who's going to be playing in their top six? Jeez, that I don't know. You're right, Kev. They were very high on him, and let alone it sounds like he wants to be there because Kev, you talked about it before. You've been surprised that there's no offer sheets going up there for Kyler Yamamoto being a right wing forward who has shown that he can have little flashes in the pan of elite skill. That one does baffle me a little bit. And what a deal for Ken Holland up there.
What's the Oilers cap situation like? Are they right up against the cap too?
They are close. They're going to be putting Clefbaum on the LTIR, and that'll open up space. With this deal, I think they got just over $1 million left, depending on who makes the team and all that.
So yeah, maybe the Oilers are just playing hardball, and like Devin said, it's just a show me deal for 1 year.
And Clefbaum's deal, just so that you don't know, it's 4.1. Or sorry, 4.1. Yeah, for
Yamamoto, I like it. I think that's a player betting on himself, right? I mean, he's not making league minimum like we've seen Yolevi make with the bet on himself, but Yamamoto's a guy who is going to play in their top six, and I think after he proves this 1 year deal, he got a prove me deal from management. I think he gets some from players certain times. And to me, this is a one from the player where, I think he wants to prove, because I think that Yamamoto's been knocked a lot, right? I mean, like for having him come in as a small size, he fell in draft at his time where he put up ridiculous points in junior. I mean, this kid's super skilled. So I think this is him putting a bet on himself for this 1 year, on this 1 year deal. And I bet he cashes in, man. I think he gets a few points this year. I'm a big fan of Yamamoto. Always have been since junior.
Yeah, he's a guy. I think the Flames should have tried it off for him, but who knows on that, what happened there on that for sure. I feel for Zdeno Chara. I can relate to Zdeno Chara. When I walked into my first year of radio and broadcasting at BCIT, there were people that were also born after 1996, and he will have that same experience when he signs with the New York Islanders, like he did back in 1996 and played with them. Matthew Barzal, was one of the players not born when Zdeno Chara last played with the New York Islanders.
It's crazy. It is kind of crazy. It's a fun little fun fact for everybody, and I'm sure that there'll be a couple jokes chucked around there for Barzal and with Chara there. But you know what? As far as the signing goes, I think it's a fantastic depth signing for the New York Islanders, and potentially a good way for Zdeno to go out playing for the team that drafted him.
Yeah, I was about to say, is it a foregone conclusion that this is his final season?
Not yet.
It's a great fit too, right? The way that they play and the way that they get to the playoffs every season. Like, nobody ever picks New York Islanders to get to the Eastern Conference Finals or work their way up to the playoffs, but it's that defensive grind style that won a Stanley Cup for the New Jersey Devils. I think that's the way that the Islanders are kind of going with their line, and he makes a lot of sense to be a third or maybe an extra defenseman as the season goes on, a guy who can take a couple nights off here and there, but as a third pairing guy makes a lot of sense in the organization. And yeah, that stat about him being drafted before, I think there's 3 or 4 players on the roster this year. That's quite the stat for Zdeno Chara. I mean, I wonder. But to me, he's one of those guys that is really, like, I'm not saying it taints their careers a lot, but to me, it's always tough to watch a guy play so long in one spot and then do this 1 year everywhere. Especially on a team like if he was in like the NBA, how we see guys just go to the Cleveland Cavaliers when LeBron James is there, or go to LeBron James' LA Lakers. Like, it's almost different than the NHL. It's not something that you really see, like a Patrick Marleau going to Toronto. Certain things like this, like, you don't see it as much, but maybe that's just part of the NHL evolving. Maybe a lot of these guys, in the Jason Spezza cases, the Joe Thornton cases, like, I think that this might be something we start to see a little bit more, where players don't want to just retire. Like, the old hockey way was, man, it's great to see Zdeno Chara be the captain forever. He'll just retire when he's done with the Bruins, but he's gone a different route. And I wonder if we start to see that a little bit more in the NHL as it kind of evolves.
And kind of almost like a nod back to Jágr too, because that's what he did at the tail end of his career as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Flames legend.
49 years old, Jaromir Jágr.
Yep. I sent out a tweet, so if you're not following, follow me. Gordhouse09. He scored 2 goals yesterday for his own team, and one was a game winner. He still has it.
An older player in check. Yeah, that's awesome.
Surprise, Jack Eichel's going to be going to Sabres camp?
No, I think he has to at least show his face and do the basically the politically right choice there and go to camp, and because the more of a headache he is, the harder it makes it for them to trade him.
Now, is he going to be like Matt Duchene, changing into another dressing room?
Forgot about that.
Yeah,
maybe. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, it sounds like Kevin Adams is trying to take the Joe Sakic approach. So,
yeah, with how toxic that back and forth between the player and the team has been, it's not out of the realm of possibility. That's for sure.
All right.
I'm here.
Yeah. Well, it looks like Faber has to go.
Oh.
So
okay.
I think we'll say goodbye to him.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Chris. Congratulations, by the way, to Quads on his new job. And tell us kind of what's going on quickly before you go.
Yeah, well, funny thing is, Kev, you'll understand this. I got to run because I got one of those 10-minute podcasts I got to put together for BCIT here. So I got an interview at 12:30 to get to. Yeah, you know those ones. I'm doing a Guilty Pleasures one, if you remember those at all.
Yeah.
So I got to run to one of those. But yeah, Quads got the promotion at Nation Network. Really excited. I mean, Nation Network, the team that they're building, it's been a lot of fun. We got I'm not going to say the name, but a former Vancouver Canuck joining Nation Network on Monday. So you guys will hear the announcement tomorrow. That's very exciting. We'll have him on the pod to chat about his time with the Canucks as well very soon here. Super excited for that. Just seeing a team they're building. We all saw what Frank Seravalli did on the expansion draft day, and then one of the best in the business. It's great to have him on the group and kind of leading the way as our writers, but to see what Nation Network's doing and based off what they've been up to and everything at Canucks Army, it's a lot of fun to have bosses and have some money be invested back into the blog sphere and what we're trying to do here at Canucks Army and at the whole network, really. So, just lots of stuff to be up on Canucks Army here. We're going to be, Dave and I will both be at camp Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, as well as the first home game in Abbotsford, which is 7 o'clock. I don't know if they've announced that yet. I just saw that in the email. But Abbotsford, 7 o'clock on Monday. That'll be the first home preseason game, so we're excited for that. We'll be there the whole time, crushing content at Canucks Army and also putting up a podcast every night with Harmon Dial, who we added to the show for Canucks Combo. We'll have an episode each night from training camp. So lots of content coming up this week. I'll probably do some hydrating for the next couple of days here and then just get ready to stay up for 20 hours each day for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Fair. Well, thanks for coming on, Chris. Have fun with the podcast, and we will talk to you soon.
And as a thanks, I know some people want to charge for appearances on podcasts and all that, but we'll get you drinks at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, hey, I was gonna say I might need some of these extra guests, my Guilty Pleasures podcast, as the year goes on that I gotta put out for BCIT. So you guys might be getting some DMs over the season, as I love final year of school here.
Sounds good.
She's there.
Absolutely, guys. Well, hey, have a good rest of the show, and it'll be fun. We got training camp coming up in a week here, so finally some hockey stuff to talk about instead of freaking contracts and whatever the hell we want to do here for the last half an hour. I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to talk some damn hockey.
We'll see to talk hockey.
Yeah. All right, guys. You have a good one.
You too.
Thanks.
Chris Faber, follow him. Chris Faber, Canucks Convo. They've got a lot of really good things going on out there for sure. Really happy to have him on. We got some string of comments here that I missed. Sorry. Phil Figs, classmate, pal, CKNW board op, says we need more beards.
All right,
I
Chris,
tried.
Get onto it, Chris.
This is all I can muster. I'm being very much frustrated with my adult body in the fact that a beard just does not appear.
I think we need more. We probably need more mustache. He's got a great mustache. Phil has a great mustache.
Well, I guess we'll have to bring Phil on then.
Yes, Phil, you're welcome to come on. Bring John Jang on too. So open invite. This one from Lucas, I wanted to bring up here quickly. I didn't hear this. Sounded like could have been traded for Anaheim in exchange for John Gibson, but Buffalo said no. Did anyone hear that?
I didn't hear any rumblings.
I heard whispers, potentially that would happen, and but it obviously with Gibson, he's been stuck down there in Anaheim for a very long time. I believe he's 26. I'm just guessing 26 or 27.
Yeah, I think he's around the same age as Demko. That sounds about right.
He's 28.
28. Oh. There you go. And so I mean. I think Buffalo probably said, Buffalo said no, which kind of makes sense because I don't think that Gibson is right in the window for them. They want kind of more so future / potentially proven prospects coming back the other way, not an older goalie, even though, he probably still has at least 5 good years left before he starts going downhill a little bit.
Is Gibson? I don't think Gibson would waive his modified no trade clause, anyways.
Yeah, why would you go from a shitty team to an even shittier team?
Yeah, that's
and move
true.
from Anaheim to Buffalo.
Yeah. So I would go from Disneyland to the coldest place in the United States too. Yeah, it would be really. Well, I almost did something similar, but anyway, that's a whole other thing there. Let's move on to anything we missed before we get into the TV talk here?
Yes, I would like to talk about Flames rookie camp or rookie game. I was going to ask. Okay, yeah. Against the Oilers last night, I watched the first half of the game, and then afterwards I had to duck out and go drink some beer somewhere. So I did that instead. But the stuff that I did see was Dustin Wolf. He is a good good prospect, and it just goes and proves everything that I've heard about him. The goals that were scored on him weren't his fault. It was more so a breakdown or a screen where he can see the puck. So there was no pucks that actually beat him cleanly, which I really enjoyed. And just want to give props to Martin Pospisil. I thought he popped really well. He's a lot bigger than I thought he actually was. He's a big boy out there, and he definitely showed it last night, along with Connor Zary. Man, what a great draft pick that Calgary got for him. And he's been showing up like every once in a while. You just popped up into the screen there while I was watching on the stream online, and man, yeah, he's everything that we thought he would be at this age, which is a very promising prospect for Calgary.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued what Connor Zary can bring. How did Pelche look?
He's solid. He was on the second line there with who was it? Francis and one other prospect. I think it was Zagorovny or Pospisil. I think it was Zagorovny. Anyways, but yeah, Pelche looked solid. He quietly did little things right, but I mean, being the very first game that they played against another team, you could tell that there's a bit of rust within that, but still a lot of promise. I'm actually very curious to see how Zary and Pelche do within the main camp here, because I think those two are going to be the question marks of whether or not they could potentially push for a job here in the NHL. Maybe. Who knows exactly what Daryl Sutter's thinking, but with all this veteran depth that they have on the main roster there. But I would say Zary looked better than Pelche.
Fair. I still don't think the Flames are done. I still think they have to they got to get something done here. I would think before the season starts, but who knows?
Yeah,
right?
I'm with you. Like the potential Monahan trade. I mean, it's more so speculation, but I think the people who follow the team as closely as we do assume that he would be on the chopping block or on the trade block for sure. And I'm with you, Kev. I think that something does need to happen. If it doesn't happen before the beginning of the season, that potentially could happen before December. And even if Calgary is in the playoff race, that there could be a bunch of trades made at the trade deadline. But if something doesn't happen this year, man, I'm going to be severely disappointed in Brad Treliving.
So I just looked up the lines for the Flames last night. It was Pospisil, Zary, and Zavgorodny on one line, and then Pelche, Francis, and Walker Dewar on the second.
Dewar. Yeah, Dewar actually played really well as well. He was not someone I really knew, but he popped as well, and maybe he was being on the line with Pelche that really helped with that. So he's a good little prospect. And why not? I forget his first name. He played decently on the defensive side of the puck there as well.
Fair.
Why not?
Why not? Cameron. I think it's Cameron. Why not?
Yes. Actually. Yeah, that sounds right.
Cameron, why not? We'll get to Lucas's comments here, but first, before we get into that, which is a good topic, we have to talk about Jim. The Sportsnet announced its regional broadcaster and its play-by-play group, and according to Jonah YYC Sports Media, Jim Hughson is reportedly not calling games this year. Patrick Johnson reached out to Rogers, and they say they have no news at this time. I tweeted out a tweet that said basically that Jim Hughson is a Hall of Famer and one of the best play-by-play callers of all time. And if you don't think that, you're wrong. And if you're celebrating the fact that Jim Hughson isn't coming back, you need to grow up. Which inspired Leaf fans to tweet back at me their knowledge of the great Jim Hughson, including one that suggested that they bring in Joe Bowen, which I don't like his style, but anyway, I think I'll just start from my perspective and then we'll get everyone else here in. I mean, yeah, he's one of the best. I think that Leaf fans have been very unfair to him over the years. I actually think that at times Jim Hughson has overcompensated to try not to be biased, to actually be over Leaf supportive in some ways, to the detriment of his call. And I think he's done a fine. I think he's been fine. I don't think that there's been any real issues with him. I think that Leaf fans want that. There's some Leaf fans, not Devin. I'm not saying you, Devin, but there's a lot of Leaf fans that want that homer cheer. And I don't think that Jim Hughson necessarily has ever been that way with a lot of teams. And that's just not the way that he's going to call it. At the same time, the other side of this conversation is what Sportsnet's talent bank has behind him. So I don't really want to speculate as to why. I don't think that that's important at this point. But you've got John Shorthill here. You've got Rick Ball. You've got, I think, one of the more underrated play-by-play combinations in hockey, and John Bartlett and Gary Galley. And you also have Hunter Ryan Singh on your team. That at this point, if you're Jim Hughson and if you're Rogers, you gotta either, from Houston's perspective, maybe you're like, you got to give them some time. But if you're Sportsnet, you also have to see where they fit other than regional spots, because they do deserve national airtime. So my point is I'm sad for Jim Hughson that it's not going to be, but I'm very excited about the future of the play-by-play combinations that are coming up. But maybe we'll deal with it. Devin, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the Houston part first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not with those Leaf supporters who were combating you with that take there, Kev. He is a Hall of Famer. He is one of the best that's ever called the game in my mind, and that's no bias whatsoever. He is very talented, and it's kind of sad to hear that he's not going to be back for on Sportsnet allegedly. So we'll see how that really breaks down, and it's really too bad that I mean, as far as the Joe Bowen take, I'm with you, Kev. I do not like his style too much. Yes, he calls the Leafs games, but it's just you want a biased person. There you go. That's a biased play-by-play announcer right there, and I would not like to see him playing or calling broadcast games. The only reason why he's saying that particular guy is saying that is because that's all he knows. And change. Oh man, you talk about change to people, and it's going against what they want. They'll fight back hard. But there's one person you did not mention within the broadcast that deserves more credit, and talk about being biased is Rick Ball. I think that he is.
I did mention him.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I forgot to mention Jack Michaels. He's also on that list as well. And I know they're very high on him too. But they are high on him.
Yeah. Well, Rick Ball, I think he is not a biased commentator. In my mind, I think that he's very fair with the way that he calls games, and I think he deserves more of a bump up within the Sportsnet ranks than he is right now. And maybe that's just the way that he wants it to stay in Calgary, because he really enjoys it here. But as far as a professional view, I think that he deserves more recognition for sure.
Yeah, Dev, you're right. In terms of baller, he does deserve it.
Go ahead, Chris.
Go, Chris.
Okay. I was going to, agree on the Rick Ball thing, and just generally say that, I agree with everyone that it's sad that Jim's not coming back this season. I think it's bullshit that the pushback that Kev got, the guy that specifically said that he wanted the Homer guy to be do the Toronto broadcast, he also basically used Boston as his inspiration. And I think you should not use that situation as inspiration for what you want for play-by-play. Like that is, I have nothing more to add in that regard. But yeah, it's just sad that I'm not sure what's going on with Jim, but he's a Hall of Famer. He's one of the best that's ever called it, and I know that I'm partially biased because he originally originated out of Vancouver. But just like bias aside, I don't think you can deny his talent for the calling the game.
Well, as Tyler pointed out, he called Jays games for years. For years, he was part of the Toronto Blue Jays broadcast. People forget that too, and nobody complained. Well, we didn't have Twitter back then, but nobody complained about the bias back then.
Because he actually put effort into complaining back then.
Yeah, Jim will be missed. And I hope he gets at least a send off of some sort, like we got with Bob Cole. He got his send off. Jim deserves it as well. Yeah.
By the way, go ahead, Sean.
I was just saying, and then with the you want your homer. That's what regional broadcasts are for. And while I understand that, like, we complain about Toronto having too many national broadcasts. Well, guess what? It looks like they're complaining that they're getting too many national broadcasts too. So maybe they need to listen to that and start showing more other Canadian teams other than just Toronto as much as they do.
Yeah. I got more. I got the comments from people, but I think more people were supporting my position than trolling me anyway. So I wasn't.
Well, in my defense, I only saw the ones that seemed to be attacking you.
Well, that was the comments, but there were a lot of people retweeting and liking it. So,
okay, good.
Yeah. The Paul Bissonnette is joining TNT. He's not my cup of tea, I will admit, but I think that TNT is trying to go for that humorous Kevin Bieksa thing, and he probably fits that demographic, and that will be interesting.
I like it. I'm not a full Paul Bissonnette fan, but I enjoy it sometimes, and I think him surrounded by his supporting cast there, I think it's a good mix of really intellectual hockey minds and then the goofy Paul Bissonnette that we know.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that he's part of that lineup. I think we looked at when TNT got part of the rights. I was expecting something like that because you look at how popular their show with Barkley and Shaq is, and I think they're looking for that. And I think BX is pretty much locked up with Hockey Night in Canada, and who else has sort of that feel to it, and it's Paul Bissonnette, even if he's not your cup of tea. But that's so I wasn't surprised at all to see him in that group.
Yeah, to Sean's effect, there's like if you're looking for someone that brings that Bieksa humor sort of poking fun aspect to the broadcast, like outside of Biz, I really can't think of anyone. So I think that it was just a natural choice for them to choose him for that. And yeah, I can definitely see that try and emulate what they do with the basketball broadcast into hockey because it amps up the entertainment factor. It leaves it feeling more fun and less dry.
Yeah. He's, as I said, not my cup of tea, but I understand what they're trying to go for there. So Monday night, there was an experiment happened by ESPN that in football that was Peyton and Eli Manning did a side broadcast that you could have saw in Canada on TSN 3 and then on the ESPN's alternate feed. 6.9 million people tuned in and out for Peyton and Eli. It was basically them they didn't call play-by-play. They just sat in two separate rooms and kind of just chatted football. They brought in guests like Charles Barkley, Russell Wilson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It got some pretty rave reviews. Do you think that this could work in the NHL? Not that we bring Peyton and Eli to the NHL, although that would be humorous in and of itself. But is there a combination that could work? Is this something that networks should think about themselves as an alternate broadcast?
Yes.
I think it would work, but my question is like, aren't they kind of already trying to do that with like Dangle's thing during the playoffs? Like maybe just bring in a more supporting cast for Dangle to utilize, but I feel like they're already kind of going that direction with what they're doing with him.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna end up doing it on like cable, but I think they'll end up doing it on like a YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
Channel like Dangle did. I think they also had what Kess's House. They did that as well, and that was basically the same thing.
Although Kess's House had more of a reality TV angle on it.
if you want to have something that would get people watching just for the novelty of it, just get Kess and Juice on there.
Toronto, anyone outside of Vancouver would hate that, but it would be amazing.
Or you could find people to do that. I bet you Kyprios would be really good. Nick Kyprios would be really good for something like that. Chris Versteeg, I think he'd be a good one for that. I think you could definitely do that. And like I said, I don't think they'll end up doing it on, at least in the next couple of years, on a cable, because we all they just show the same thing on 4 different channels anyways. So
that in the future is online. So I honestly, to me, YouTube makes more sense than to put it onto cable. But that's just my take.
Yeah, getting Sean, you hit the nail on the head there. I think getting like a Bieksa Versteeg kind of angle. Sorry, Kess, I'm not a big fan of you, surprisingly enough. But I think that with Bieksa, he's grown in popularity, and it's not so much that he's a Vancouver based player anymore or Anaheim based player, but now he's well known for his funny takes and giving and taking zingers from Elliot Friedman. So I think along with Versteeg, if you don't listen to him on the Fan 960, I don't know if he's back. He's on Wednesday mornings. And he does like a little hit there, and God, he is such a good hockey mind, and he still has that kind of locker room camaraderie to him as well. So having that kind of a mix would be perfect. I didn't listen or watch that Eli or the Manning brothers go at it, but I like the idea of it for sure.
It's basically it's a watch along with the TV. With TV there, as opposed to YouTube, you can't show the game. It's basically a watch. It was a watch along. I appreciate the humor and their insight. I got trolled by this too. No one talked about this, but I don't think the sports industry does enough for the people that are short-sighted or blind. And I understand that people don't think that this is a big deal, but to me, it is a big deal. And one of my pet peeves is when people say you can see. Well, actually, not everyone can actually see. And I think that the fact that there was no play-by-play on Peyton and Eli did stunt that for me a little bit. Like it's great that they talked football, and it's great for us that can see the play. But if you are blind, I don't think that is it's not something that some can enjoy. And you can argue, well, there's the radio or another. You can go to traditional, but this needs to be accessible for everybody. And I think that was missing from Peyton and Eli. And that's why I didn't necessarily have it as an A, but a little bit of a B on that. I do think that is an issue. And I may be sensitive on that, but there was a student in my class that was blind, and I saw some of the struggles he had kind of get through school. And I just think that that's something that we don't pay enough attention to. That's just me, though.
It is. And I think it's this. They're trying something new, and then they may need to build on it and work on talking about it more. But it is also a alternate feed too.
Yeah.
Right. So it's for me when it's an alternate feed for people who want to watch it, who want to consume it, whether it's watch or listen or whatever. Right. Like that. So, it's. I said this is the first time they've tried it. And I think it's going to grow, and it's going to change.
For sure. It is a game. I'm not saying it's not a game changer. It is a game changer. We're talking about it now. It's been talked about all week. They're going to do it again. It is a game changer for sure. So, although the WWE has been doing this for years, but anyway, but the last thing, back to Abbotsford, Lucas asked this question, which is, there should be TV contract, radio contract for Abbotsford. Strong relationship. Wouldn't be shocked if Rogers picks up the Abbotsford's rights. If anything, The likeliest radio station to get it is CKQCFM. No sources, just research of the area. I am surprised we haven't heard anything yet on Abbotsford. I'm wondering if maybe Chorus jumps on that too. I wouldn't be surprised if the traffic station picks it up too. They picked up the Whitecaps. They picked up the Lions. They are reportedly going after the Canucks. That might be a way for them to get in. But that it is interesting that we haven't saw that yet.
I'm not too sure. And I think when you brought up the fact that Chorus is going after that, my only caveat is if they do, and now that they'll have, if they get that, then they'll have basically all three major sporting teams in Vancouver. You have to have an all sports radio station. Like, if you're not having an all sports radio station when you've got all those rights, you're doing a disservice to those teams to do so. And that, because it just, it needs to happen. So in terms of what happens with Abbotsford, I am surprised we haven't heard anything in terms of whether it's radio or the radio rights, because I believe AHL has some sort of all-encompassing TV rights deal.
Yeah.
Or even just a local TV rights deal, because I think we're September 19th. The AHL season starts pretty quickly here, and and nothing's been announced. I think that's a bit of a fail on the Abbotsford Canucks.
Yeah. It's AM 7:30. I was going on by the way.
Quick question. Is Czech TV available for most lower mainland people, or is it mostly just for the people on the island? Like, I know it's based off of the island, but like, is it easily accessible to get in the lower mainland? Like, would Czech potentially be like a TV option for the Abbotsford Canucks?
Yeah, it probably would depend on it's accessible. For sure. Yes, you can get it in Abbotsford. You can get it anywhere. I think you can get it anywhere in BC. However, the issue is how would they broadcast that?
Yeah, they would have to invest in infrastructure for sure.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we need to talk about that we didn't?
Yes. I got a bit of a list here. I know we're almost at 2 hours here, but just a couple of things that I found interesting. The Evander Kane situation should be answered by the beginning of training camp, which for most teams starts on the 22nd, so that'll have some closure. As far as the Blackhawks go, there's no timeline for the allegations there, unfortunately. But the one thing that I really wanted to bring up that I found really cool is that for puck tracking, they are some players notice a difference between the pucks, and they're trying to get it so it's seamless with having those microchips inside, or however they're going to be tracking the puck for broadcasts and for other, I guess, just knowledge about the game. But what's going to happen is that they're going to be using it in preseason games, which is actually kind of interesting. So I'm going to be curious to see how the reports come out of that and how the players react to how much different the puck is. And Bill Daly was saying that it is looking pretty seamless right now as far as their new pucks that have that puck tracing technology. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah, that I forgot about that they're trying to implement that. And remember, was it last year that they gave out pucks for the teams to play with and practice with? And that, as you said, Dev, there were some players who noticed just it handled differently. So they want to make sure. I really hope it happens. So.
And if players are noticing a difference, my question then is, are these chips being installed after the manufacturing process, or are they like working with the manufacturers and installing them as they're being made?
My guess would be that it's while it's being made. It wouldn't make any sense for them to do anything after fact, because the consistency would be gone within that as well.
Yeah, I guess, and they'd easily fall apart probably at that rate as well. Yeah.
That's
They need to stand up to the Shea Weber slap shot test.
Yeah, 100%.
Because the first time a slap shot happens, it hits the post and the puck breaks apart.
Oh,
There goes that.
All hell would break loose. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Integrity is gone.
So let's just do some quick promotion here. We've got next on Tuesday, I'm going to be interviewing Jamie Neugenbauer on the Moose Jaw Warriors for our WHL segment, and we'll talk about what's going on in the East from his perspective. We'll get the Connor Bedard perspective. He got to watch the Warriors this weekend as well. We also got the Third Line Pod coming on as well. They are it's Adam, Jessica, Liz Childs, and Chris Roy. And they cover 4 different WHL teams. It'll be fun to talk with them. And just finalizing a date, but I'll be interviewing Luke Prokop as well. I don't know if we'll be putting that on a podcast or just going to be an article. We haven't discussed that yet. So that's going to be, I'm looking forward to doing that as well. Any other promotion that we need to do at this point? Buy your stuff at Van City.
You're here. Yes.
Heidi and I recorded a Heels and Wheels podcast yesterday. Go to get it on YouTube, and we talked about all the craziness that happened with the F1 last week, with Danny Ricciardo winning the Italian Grand Prix and that crash between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. And then we also talked about everything that's happened in professional wrestling in the past couple weeks, because it's been a crazy few weeks with debuts in AEW and everything all along there. So please go give that a watch or a listen.
All right. We will leave it there. How do we follow everyone?
I am Bearded Canucks 03 on Twitter.
I'm at Schneids on most social media.
Follow me on Twitter, Gordhouse09.
Tyler is TNOBLE. I am KEVOLE. Podcast_hockey. Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast. YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast. We will be back next week, 11 Pacific, 12 Mountain. I might be podcasting from an actual hockey rink, but we'll figure that out. But we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.